It's a stronger Friday morning, and that also put additional pressure on canola. But on the other side, ideas that the recent losses are looking overdone provided some support. Ongoing uncertainty over the size and quality of this year's canola crop also helped underpin the market. Soybeans, though, they're narrowly mixed, up a penny to down a penny. January down 1 at $8.88 per bushel. Conflicting sentiment over U.S.-China trade relations kept some caution in the market ahead of the weekend, as traders flipped back and forth from optimistic to pessimistic over the negotiations. The USDA announced weekly U.S. soybean export sales of 470,000 tons this morning. That was at the lower end of trade estimates. But a separate flash sale of 100,000 tons to unknown destinations was also announced, and that was a bit supportive. The monthly U.S. oilseed crushing report released yesterday showed a record crush pace in October, with the 172.3 million bushels of soybeans processed during the month, up 7% from September. Corn futures, they're a bit weaker. December down 2 cents at $3.65 per bushel. Weekly U.S. corn exports did come in at the higher end of expectations at about 900,000 tons. However, fresh cases of African swine flu in China pressured corn values amid expectations for declining feed demand from that country. Wheat futures, they're mostly higher, seeing some consolidation to end the week. The December Chicago contract up 2 cents at $5.08 per bushel. Kansas City wheat up 2 cents as well in December at $4.82 per bushel. And Minneapolis spring wheat up a quarter cent in December at $5.75 per bushel. Weekly wheat sales of 438,000 tons were in line with expectations, but still soft overall. However, prices are now thought to be low enough that traders expect to see better exports going forward. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday morning, November 16th. In Winnipeg for Markets Farm, I'm Phil Frantz-Warkentin.
The end of 2018 is a perfect opportunity for you to save big. Visit Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and take advantage of 0% financing or choose cash back on current year New Holland tractors and equipment. It's out with the old and in with the new. The New Holland year-end celebration ends December 31st. So hurry into Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John now. For commercial use only, customer participation subject to credit qualification and CNH Industrial Capital Canada Limited approval. Standard terms, conditions, and other restrictions apply. Down payment may be required.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Boland.
Well, I'm not your host, Trevor Boland, but I am going to play host this morning. My name is Adam Rayburn. Good morning. I'm playing host because Trevor and I want to talk about real estate, and I don't think there's anyone better than Mr. Boland to talk real estate. You've been in the market. Well, how long have you been doing real estate?
Too long.
Too long. Okay, fine.
No, it's like
this is how it's going to be. Apparently, when I help you out to take over being a host.
Well,
right?
I just like that we both feel that there's nobody better to answer these questions than me, right? So I mean, that starts us
the
off
ego part.
perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we want to talk about real estate this morning, and so we're kind of flipping things around and making you be the person that is being interviewed today and talking about the real estate market, because we really haven't had any real discussions about what it's been like here in the last, we'll call it in 2018, and what it's going to be like going forward here with LNG Canada and all the other things that are happening in our area for 2019 and beyond. So let's start with let's look back. So we've kind of gone through the worst was 2016, was it? The market was kind of at its worst in 2016.
It was, and part of this is exactly like you said. It's people always asking, you know, what is the market changed, right? Mm-hmm. Have we hit the bottom yet? So, I mean, the easiest thing for us to do is to look at the past, and we look at something like 2016. So I took a good look at the last decade of what our market's done and to figure out kind of where we were in order to figure out where we're going to go, mm-hmm. right? So, and you and I have talked about this lots, yes. And we've had guests on the show that have talked about their market or the changes that have happened, and it was time for us to do ours. And 2016, year to date, so up until November 1 of that year,
okay.
We saw 246 transactions happen. 246
pieces of property
dwellings.
Basically
exactly,
sold.
Yeah, changed hands. And when we look at 246, I mean, mm-hmm. very low. 2014 would have been our highest at 550.
Okay, so you're looking at a 50% drop, basically.
Over a 50% drop, right? So when we look at that, but it's funny because we look at that kind of that 2016 at 246, we've never really wavered a lot from what our average price has been, right? So even when you see people now saying, oh, Fort St. John housing prices are high, they're lower than they've been for the last decade. But yeah, you know what? They're still probably the highest in northern BC, including cities like Prince George and those areas. So, at that point in time, we were an average list price of about $389,000 with an average sale about $374,000. So still in that 4%. And it's funny because when I look back over the last 10 years, we've always been about a 4% average list price to sale price ratio.
Okay.
So
and that means basically the price that is listed versus the price that it actually sells at.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So for, people always wonder what something sold for, right?
Sure.
It's like, oh, my neighbor's house is up for $480,000. Mine's going to be worth $520 because it's better. But when you look at what that actual ratio is with about a 4% drop,
gotcha.
And it's funny because we look at that and literally this year's no different as far as the list price to sale price ratio. So when we see that list price to sale price ratio stay strong, even though our market shed 50% of volume and shed upwards of about $35,000 in value as far as sale prices go, we held strong on that 4% list price to sale price ratio.
So that's the good part, but of course the bad part is we're not seeing the market move. We're not seeing the properties actually moving, right? Or especially in 2016, we weren't seeing
2016
that.
was
but
bad.
We have seen a little bit of improvement since that time?
We have, yeah. 2018, current to date, we've seen about 348 sales.
Okay.
So when you look, you look at going from 246 2 years ago to 350 now, we've seen those extras now strengthen our market. And for the first time, which is ending October 31st, November 1st sort of idea, for the first time, our average sale has actually exceeded that of what we've seen in 2016.
So the average sale price of an individual home.
Price, yep. So the average sale price is up about $5,000-$6,000, so not a huge amount of money, but that shows us an absolute recovery because it shows us that, in 2016, our average sale price stayed high because we were still basing it off 2015 sales, right, as far as year to date goes, because we didn't have that full year. So to see us now end at that, kind of that 377,000, that gives us a really good idea of where our market's going and where this change has actually started, which if I were to pinpoint, it was about August. July, August is kind of when we went, oh, hold on a second, something's changing in our market. We had the first pre-sales that had happened in 2.5 years.
And a pre-sale would be a house that's built, or explain what a pre-sale is.
So pre-sale, so 2014, Fort St. John was probably the king of pre-sales as far as northern BC, but I mean even into BC, right? Because we were to the point where there were so many houses that were under contract where ground wasn't even broken yet.
Gotcha.
People were waiting, 8 to 12 months to get into their home, and we've seen a lot of that occur 2012, 2013, 2014. As we started to build back up from 2009, which was the last time we had a market adjustment. We've just this year seen that start to happen again, and I mean, it's great. I mean, it's unfortunate because we lost probably 60% of our developers. We've lost probably 70% of our builders. So it's left us as a very tight new housing market. But the pre-sales have come back. So we've now had subdivisions in town where, they've got 4 or 5 houses pre-sold, construction not started yet. So it shows that movement in the market again, which is fantastic.
So you touched on a little bit about developers leaving or the change on the other side, which is the new housing market, right? So we're seeing some stuff sell that is existing already, but what are we seeing on the side of new construction and that? Because I know this year for building permits, there was almost barely any for new home construction. There was definitely a few.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. There's always a few that happen every year, but we definitely dropped dramatically from even 2 years ago or a year ago, right?
Yeah, we did. If you compare it to 2 years ago, we're actually right now, the latest report that came out, we're in a little bit better shape than we were last year. If you compare it to 2 years ago, we're in a lot better shape. But it's funny because, this is the first time since probably, and even in the late 90s, we didn't, when the market changed and we had a bit of an adjustment there, we didn't see the impact that we've seen this year because we didn't have such a big growth boom before that. So, this was the first time that all of a sudden we've seen brand new houses coming up as bank repos, right? Where builders, we're in the middle of building 4 or 5 houses on a project and lost them all. And it's now become the first year where we've seen these repos come up. The market has now absorbed them. people got phenomenal buys on them. I mean, there were some houses that probably sold $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 less than what they would have normally sold for. So we see that happen, and that's what corrects a market. And the only scary thing that we also see happen that comes with that is the less amount of new homes that enter the market, the higher the dollar volume is going to get for the existing used homes. So I know I say that's scary. It's good for the homeowners, but it becomes very dangerous for the market going forward. Typically, we need about 150 new homes a year to hit the market in our normal years. I would suspect we'll be lucky to see 50 hit the market next year.
Sure, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
so that leaves us a gap of 100 homes in that type of the market. So what you're going to find is you're going to find homes, downward pressure on homes that are 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. Those values are going to come back up quite quickly, and I would say it's going to start the spring of this coming 2019.
So basically, we're moving from where it was a buyer's market back to a seller's market, is what it sounds like, right?
We are, yeah. I think we're going to spend this part of the winter in kind of a balanced market. Right now in our market, there's 348 active single-family dwellings for sale. So some of those are going to have offers on them that are pending, right? Like we've had a couple sales that have happened recently where the market, the listing literally comes on the market within 2-3 days, gets an offer on it, goes under contract. Our sale times are a little bit longer right now because it's more of a process working with banks, right?
Sure,
Stuff like
with
that.
mortgage rule changes and stuff.
Exactly, right? When the federal government, the provincial government start to get involved, it makes things a little bit trickier, a little bit stickier. But it's kind of that, it's going to take an extra 5 days. We're going to make it work. But it's going to be interesting because I think we're going to go into a balanced market. I would suspect January, February, March. And then I think you're going to see kind of the scale start to tip a little bit. And I think you're going to see a lack of inventory on the market. I think you're going to see a lot of first-time home buyers going, oh, you know what? This is our last chance. We're going to miss the boat. We need to do this now. And however that looks, they need to get into the market in order to get those kind of returns that we've seen in previous years.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here on Trev Talks, talk a little bit more about real estate right after this.
Dr. Kevin Wong has been coming to Fort St. John since 2017, and ever since, all of his cosmetic Botox and filler clinic dates have been fully booked. Dr. Wong brings his highly specialized training in Botox and filler injections to Fort St. John every month at affordable prices. UBC trained in head and neck and facial plastic surgery, Dr. Kevin Wong works out of Dr. Strasden and Sanga's Orthodontic Clinic. To book, call today at 1-855-515-SKIN or visit rejuviderm.ca.
Get your requests on now for the Wendy's Noon Hour Takeover. Now serving 2 locations in Fort St. John and Dawson Creek. Text us at 250-800-2360.
Wendy's fresh beef patty, applewood smoked bacon, portobello mushrooms, and cheddar cheese sauce on a toasted bun. It's the bacon portobello mushroom melt, and it's only at Wendy's.
The Noon Hour Takeover, brought to you by Wendy's.
Since 1957, the best comedians and music has been seen and heard at the Lido. In continuing with that tradition, we are proud to present Under the Mistletoe, Thursday, November 29th. The Fort St. John firefighters invite you to an evening featuring entertainment by the Las Vegas Dueling Pianos, with all ticket proceeds benefiting the Firefighters Charitable Society. Make sure you get your tickets to this show or any of our other great performances by heading to our website, thelido.ca, or call us at 250-785-3011. Poor Boy Trucking would like to salute the organizers and players in the annual Oilman's Curling Bonspiel. Poor Boy Trucking Limited is locally owned and has been serving Fort St. John for 20 years. They specialize in general oil-filled transportation and hauling with bed trucks, winch tractors, and dumps, and picker trucks, plus 24-hour service. They're there when you need them. Give them a call at 785-8902. Poor Boy Trucking is a proud sponsor of the annual Oilman's Curling Bonspiel.
Are you looking for the perfect carpet? Peerless Carpet offers a wide assortment of styles, colors, and patterns to fit any budget. Peerless offers a variety of quality Canadian-made carpet with a soft underfoot that's beyond comfortable. Feel it for yourself. Come visit Rosebrook Flooring and Paints, where quality and service matters most. That's Rosebrook Flooring and Paints, located on 101st Avenue in Fort St. John, where you're guaranteed.
Need occupational testing? Northwest Hearing Services Limited has you covered. Locally owned and operated since 1991, Northwest Hearing Services can provide you with 24-hour pre-access drug and alcohol screening, respirator fit testing, pre-employment medicals, and of course, hearing tests. Their mobile trucks are 4x4 radio equipped to tackle any location or stop by the office on 100th Avenue. They can also fit you for custom hearing protection for work, shooting, sleepers, or swim. Walk-ins welcome. Northwest Hearing Services, they're here for you.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca. This is Trev Talks with Trevor Bolin.
Well, we've turned the tables this morning. My name is Adam Rayburn, and Trevor is not the host. He is the guest today as we're talking about real estate. And before the break, we touched on some of the changes that we've already started to see here in Fort St. John. And I think it's safe to say a lot of that is from industry starting to get busier in Fort St. John, right? And LNG Canada's announcement back in October was kind of the catalyst for the other side of the equation for LNG, which is the folks in Kitimat. Their market just exploded really overnight.
Oh, it was huge. And I mean, we had, and I don't remember the exact date. It was, 2 months ago. We had one of the larger performing or producing realtors on the show in that area, and same thing. They were just starting to see some things trickle in, and and he mentioned comments about maybe more multiple offers coming and prices rising, and now we look back, a month and a half, 2 months later, and they've doubled their values of bare land. Their single family homes have gone up anywhere from $125,000 to $150,000. And that's something we've never seen here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've had some crazy markets. We've had 16 to 18% increases. We've never had that sort of 50% increase.
And especially that fast.
And such, what it is, and I mean, we've talked about this a little bit off air, and anybody that I've talked to, it's a lot of it's media driven. So you see in the Vancouver papers, and you see it down south and into Alberta a little bit about how hot this market is and how hot the Kitimat market's going to be. I almost said Fort McMurray, which that takes me back some years.
Fort Mac, yeah.
Yeah, that how hot it is, and you've got all these people then trying to jump in and get a little piece of this, not realizing that they've already missed the boat, literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've literally missed the segment where it's a good time to get into a market for a guaranteed safe play in the short term. I'm not a short-term guy, and I've never been a short-term guy. And we've had folks that have come to Fort St. John looking at the short term, and you don't do well in the short term. And I think for Kitimat, they've got 5 years of solid building, they've got 5 years of solid growth. But what happens after that? And that was one of the biggest fears when Fort St. John became kind of the highlight of the investment market as far as British Columbia goes, was Site C.
Site C, yeah.
Right? People going, oh, wow, this great big mega project, and there's going to be
Well, we had
10,000.
literally companies bringing in investors, and some of the buildings are up and open right now, right? Where they were selling to investors from Vancouver, basically, buy this apartment, we'll rent it out, we'll do all this stuff for you, and then you saw these apartment buildings being built. We haven't seen that for some time, right?
No, we haven't. And that's why, when you look at Fort St. John is a phenomenally safe long-term play. Because even when we go through the hiccups that we've been through, like the last 2 years, for example, right? Worst market we've had in a generation, but we can actually pinpoint exactly when that change happens. And you can't do that in a lot of markets. But Fort St. John, I always said to people, if you don't like the market, just wait one season because it's going to change. Mm-hmm. Because that's how fast our market changes.
So let's keep on LNG Canada for a second. So that's probably the biggest part as to why our market will change next year, or one aspect of it, at least?
It's definitely an aspect of it. I mean, you look at Canada LNG, and I mean, even prior to Canada LNG, we had Woodfibre. Mm-hmm. Woodfibre is certainly not as big of a player, right? It's a very small player compared to Canada LNG, but they know where their gas is coming from, right? Mm-hmm. They know that the gas is coming from Fort St. John. So Canada LNG, for an example, for every $1 billion they spend building the plant and the pipeline, which of course benefits everybody in the province, $3.86 billion needs to be spent in Northeast BC. So you look at a 5-year, $1 billion plan, or you look at a 40-year, $3.86 billion plan. To me, it's a pretty clear indication of what mainstream media is missing. What the mainstream media misses with Fort St. John is that long-term. You're not going to move to Kitimat. You're not going to move your family to Kitimat if you've got a 2-year job on this piece of the plant. right? You're going to move your family to Fort St. John if you've got a 40-year career
and I
ahead
guess
of you.
that's the difference, right, between the two communities right now is they will feel a boom and they'll have some good solid employment after the plant is built. But for us, it is about that 40 years of exploration. They got to feed the plant, right?
Huge.
Basically with gas.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
And look at, and again, a lot of people don't understand the amount of man hours that goes into, say, one drilling pad.
Sure,
If you've got
yeah.
a drilling pad that's a 5-acre site, by the time you've got loggers and surveyors and exploration and roads builders and
Yep.
services crews and now we're on to, camp setups, and then you're into camp workers and drilling workers and oil companies. And all of a sudden, before you know it, each site has 136 employees, right? We'll do that over 40 years with the amount of drilling that they need to do. When the city had done a study, and it was part and parcel with the province, or maybe we got that study, but what came back to us from the province at that time was our biggest drilling year of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
They would need to increase drilling 6 times the amount we had in 2016 in order to meet these future demands of LNG. Right? That's enormous.
So going back to the real estate market, I guess that's the point of what you're saying. For us here is long term, it should be pretty stable, or it always kind of has been from what you're saying based on the stats. But it seems like it's going to continue to be that way, especially if the economy does benefit from an LNG Canada, where we're seeing that consistent work and drilling happening over the next 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see it back to, when Fort St. John boomed in the 1970s, it was part and parcel. And I mean, most of it was because, I'm going to be working out of that area for 5 or 6 or 7 years,
Yep.
right? I'm going to move my family to that area. This whole travel back and forth thing gets old, because for anybody who's got young kids and they know they're going to be here in this area
Yeah.
drilling for 4 to 5 years,
Yeah.
it makes sense, right? The move makes sense. So I think what we need to do is we need to be ambassadors for the community. We need to show what the benefits of actually moving here are, because there's a lot of benefits of moving here, and they're going to be working here.
So have you or your agent seen or started to receive a lot of calls from out-of-towners looking to move into Fort St. John? So those people that are either working up here or plan to be working up here looking for a house. Have you got those phone calls?
Not as many yet, and I
No.
think part and parcel of that is I was talking to some of the hotel owners the other day, and they're at literally at 100% booked from January and on. And most of those are out-of-town people coming to Fort St. John for the first time,
the
or
work.
we're starting
Yeah.
to work. And they're going to look towards hotels. They're going to look towards rentals before they start looking at the ownership model, right? Which is why I said over the winter we'll probably switch more to a bit of a balanced market before we switch next year into more of a seller's market. Is people need the time to adjust to the community. That's not a bad thing. So we've got hotels are full coming January. We've got Wanda from Action Realty was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
She mentioned we're between that 8 to 10% now, down from 30%, with speculation of going to about 3% come the same time, January,
For rental
February,
market,
right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when we look at all of that happening, is our market going to explode overnight? No. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good
Sure.
thing. But are we in the position right now to see probably a 6 to 8% growth as far as our market goes, as far as our pricing goes in 2019? We're pretty much exactly on pace for that right now.
Okay. So let's look at some of the other real estate markets kind of around the problems. We touched on Kitimat a bit. Vancouver's kind of going the opposite direction of us right now. They've seen some pretty big drops, basically,
Seen some
right?
huge
Massive
drops.
changes, especially from the day where it was you get multiple offers and hundreds and maybe even $1 million over your ask, right? There's some major numbers happening in that area.
And it's always, and it blows my mind, because so that was happening. I mean, you
Yeah.
and I remember us talking about it, and I remember everybody talking about it, because
Yeah.
that was the only thing that was in the news. And now all of a sudden they're posting 23% drops and 23% declines. And mum's the word,
Sure.
right? There might be
Yeah.
one article written about it.
Yep.
And you're right, there was literally multiple offers going hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s over list price. But it never, ever had any foundation underneath it. I was talking to somebody, I mean, even that entire Lower Mainland area, but I was talking to a realtor one time down south on the island, and he said, "Oh, this is the best times we've ever had. This is the busiest the island's ever been." I said, "But what's substantiating your growth?" Right? Because any market can boom. And then you're going to have a little bit of an influx. But if you've got nothing to back that up, if you've got no foundation underneath it, you're going to have a huge drop, as we're seeing on 23% declines in the Lower Mainland.
Which I guess in the end is bad for the new buyer who bought in at that high point and now can't sell that property for the same amount they bought, right? So now they're upside down in that home or that apartment, whatever it might be.
And what do most people do if they're upside down for more than 6 months, 8 months, 12 months? Here's the keys.
Yeah.
Right? Because at what point in time can you drop 23% in a quarter, right? Because it's literally only been a quarter. That's not even a full year stat on that yet. So you're going to drop 23% on your value. You drop another 20%. You're down 43% from what you paid for it. You're not going to recover that. It is going to take you decades to recover that. So if we're Europe and we buy a home and we own that home for 80 years because we live in it and our kids live in it and their
whole
kids live in
family
it,
generations live
then
in it,
okay, right? You've got that generational gap to grow. But if you're like a typical Canadian where you're in your home for 3 to 5 years, because truly that's what the market change is, 4 years in Fort St. John, you can't live with those kind of losses.
So how do we prevent some of that stuff from happening here in our market, right? Obviously, we won't go through that same boom that they did because you're looking at a lot of foreign investment there, a lot more foreign investment, right? But how would we kind of prevent that kind of thing from happening here? So we at least have, as we discussed before, keeping kind of a stable increase. If we see some drop, it's a manageable drop versus an unreasonable 20-25% decrease in values of homes.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant question. And part of that goes back to the boundary expansions the city has done. Fort St. John for the longest time was this really tight little 22 square kilometer community where we weren't stacking yet because that's not something that appeals to the Fort St. John market, but lots were getting a little bit smaller because we were trying to figure out how to work in this, and then the city did the 2 boundary expansions, which is going to help us huge, right? Because it's going to enable there to be enough product on the market. So once builders and developers start to look at Fort St. John again, which will be coming probably spring of 2019, where they'll start to realize that this is the long-term play, you'll start to see them come back, which will do more than put 50 homes on the market. Next year is going to be a really tight market because if we only get, that 35 to 50 new home construction, the downward pressure could equal out to about 12 to 13% increases on existing used newer homes. That's what we want to avoid, right? What would be ideal? 4 to 6% growth per year. But we need to do that with encouraging and attracting enough people to get involved with the market. And that's always been our hardest thing. Do you want to live in Kelowna and build, or do you want to live in Fort St. John and build? Most people are going to choose the south because they can't build on days like today.
Sure, they don't want to build today.
Right.
But okay, I guess when you look in the northwest corner of the city, that's where we do have a lot of empty lots. Sunset Ridge, I think, still has got some open lots there.
Sunset, Garrison,
yeah.
Country View. I mean, they're doing quite well. They're building out on those pre-sales we talked about earlier. But we've still got Station 44.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Right, where there's probably, I would venture to guess, 90 lots, and maybe 4 or 5 of them have been built on. Different kind of product, right?
Sure.
That was a product that was designed for the boom, right?
Yeah.
Was that single family with suites, duplexes, etc. I think you're going to find, I would say in total, we probably have about 150 lots that need to be dealt with before you see any other developments.
So the problem isn't we don't have lots; it's we don't have anyone building on
them.
Okay,
yeah. And it's going to take us some time because a builder's not going to come here or even that's here now and commit to doing 10 to 15 or 20 homes in a single construction season with our market just recovering. So we may not find builders showing interest in Fort St. John until later into 2020, right? So that's going to put us behind the 8 ball for 2 years. That's the danger with our market when you ask the question of, how can we have sustainable growth and not these great big peaks and valleys that we do, right? And that's part of it.
So then, and for most of those people, the builders, they're not pre-sales or what? Explain that a little bit in the past, because a builder typically they're building on spec, right? So they're basically saying, here we're going to take this lot, we're going to build this house that we think someone will buy, and hopefully by the time we're done, we've got it sold. That's the traditional model, right?
Yeah.
It's not very often that you have the house pre-sold.
No, it's not. It's not often at all. The only time pre-sales will happen is when that ratio of existing homes on the market drops so low that you can't meet the demand. And that's, we've seen that 2005, 6, and 7. Those were three very, very big pre-sale years. And then we've seen that again kind of 2012, 2013, 2014. As the market in Alberta changed in 2015, because that was the first market that we should have went, okay, well, wait, something's going on.
Something's happening, yeah.
Right? We didn't get hit until 2016, but, if we look for the signs. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the inevitable, which is the same thing again. You're going to have so much downward pressure on that existing homes that, and typically that guy who's sitting in a 3 to 5 year old home is looking to upgrade to a brand new home.
Sure.
Right. Well, when that availability starts to become unbalanced, which is what we'll get into if only 50 homes are built next year, that's when we're going to see that change. So pre-sales are nice because it will help control a market. Right. It'll take people a little bit longer to get into their homes, but they can literally walk through a home and say, I love this house. Well, I'm sorry, folks, that, this house was built for...
I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2011. My wife and I bought a house when it was there was just walls.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we had much choice, right? And so we were just like that. We didn't get to even pick the colors of the paint or anything like that.
It was already
that if you
decided.
already went through, because we already decided, already ordered, cupboards were on the way. So, that's what it was. And I want to say that was 2011 when that happened.
2011,
right?
which was the start of it going into that. And we literally had, I think at one point in 2014, we had a list of 14 buyers that had pre-sales that just the first house was started, right? So, I mean, and that's why it's that year-long process before they get into it. But, that's the only thing that's going to change the amount of lot inventory that we've got right now, because we're sitting on an awful lot of lots because we've lost most of our builders. But that is going to return, but I don't think it's going to return fast enough.
Gotcha.
That's where we're going to get into trouble.
We'll talk a little bit more about real estate right here on Trev Talks on Moose FM.
Oh, can't believe this winter, eh?
Oh, I know. The snowdrifts are taller than my car. Almost need a moose to ride to work, man.
Hey, there's one now.
Find your toques and snow brush. The Backcountry Community Cruiser is going to be at events all winter long. Bundle up and join Moose FM at the best local events in the Peace region. Fundraisers, concerts, festivals, and more.
What about hockey at the ODR?
We can be there too. If you've got an event coming up, let us know so we can show up and join the party. Email cruiser@moosefm.ca. The Backcountry Community Cruiser, your guide to excitement throughout the Peace, is brought to you in part by Totem Mall, Micro Consulting Sales and Services, and Moose FM. Now, a Sports Boosters update.
For professional pipeline and facility-related services, see Can-Do Oilfield. They offer services including pipeline construction, installation of multi-well pads and tie-ins, gas processing facilities, field fabrication, and more. Can-Do Oilfield Services. Visit candooilfield.ca.
Send us your sports info, sports@moosefm.ca, or by fax, 263-9749. Sports Boosters on Moose FM.
If you're looking for hassle-free internet services, call the Peace Region Internet Society today. With coverage throughout most of the Peace, PRIS can get you connected quickly without the hassle of contracts or bundles. Visit PRIS.ca or call 1-800-768-3311 for more information.
Now, a Sports Boosters update.
Want to curl but don't know how? Fort St. John Curling Club is having a Try It curling event starting October 29th to December 3rd from 6:30 till 8:30 p.m. Try It is for young and old. They'll teach you the basics in curling. Come and learn and bring your friends. What's required? Warm clothes, stretchy pants, clean running shoes, and there's a $5 charge for the broom and slider. Hope to see you there. That's October 29th to December 3rd.
Send us your sports info, sports@moosefm.ca, or by fax, 263-9749. Sports Boosters on Moose FM.
Ryerson Contracting, proud to be a sponsor of local sports. Ryerson Contracting, specialists in pipeline and facility construction, turnarounds, and maintenance. Let Ryerson Contracting's combination of quality personnel and equipment complete your next job with safety and integrity. Call 785-0515.
Our community first. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Bolin.
Keeping on the line of development, we talked about just in the break here, and we'll want to bring it up on the air. There is, of course, plans for a new housing development in Fort St. John. Evergreen Estates, I think, is what we've got the name right, and so it's supposed to be located west of the Montmurray School right now, so on the other side of the bypass. That one's kind of gone through from the council side of things. We started to see some early development plans of what that could look like. Do you remember how many homes and properties and what kind of the numbers were there? I think it was very big numbers.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
I know they've had their public meetings as far as informing the people, and I think you guys even had done a story on it one time, and they've got a website set up, and I almost want to say there was 3,000 to 4,000 units.
So because obviously it's going to be a mix of, there was some apartments, there was some single detached, there will be townhouses. Yeah.
So I think it was 3,000 to 4,000 total combined units. But part of their not their mandate, but part of their vision was a 30-year build out too.
Okay.
Well, and it's funny because I remember when you guys posted the story and a lot of people commented, and there was comments of like, why do we need this, and why we don't need this right now? Have you checked out the market? And it's like, a project like that from the day you make your first application to the city or the Ministry of Transportation or wherever, no matter where you're going to develop, at that point in time, you're 2 to 3 years away from even doing anything. So
Okay.
it's not like you can do pre-sales. It's not like you can start marketing this thing. It's community awareness for 2 or 3 years while you get everything in line. And even after that point, we've got a construction season here that only lasts 5 months as far as deep services goes.
So the point is, I guess, on that one is we're not looking at that's going to be developed tomorrow.
No.
They're banking on, as we've discussed, the long term, the next 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's a project that's going to take, I guess it's like everything. It's not overnight.
No.
We'd like to talk about the big 4,000 units, 3,000, 4,000 units, but they're not going to build them tomorrow and suddenly we've been flooded with all
Drive
that
by
stuff.
and go, holy cow, right? There's a whole community in the community living here. And that's why we need projects like that, right? There's that one, and then there's actually another piece that they've started to kind of process on the other side of the hospital. So,
okay.
One in the northeast, one in the northwest, and it's the same sort of an idea. We have 150 lots available, as we talked about, before anybody's going to do anything, because nobody wants to jump into a market that's got 150 lots for sale. So, if we're 2 to 3 years from them even turning dirt, right, that gives us 50 lots a year in order to deal with that, and I don't even know what for sure is over on the south side, but from that point in time, you're another 15 years away before you can drive by and go, wow, look at this.
Here's
right?
something.
So,
Yeah.
We're looking, that's part of that, what we talked about in the very beginning, that 40-year plan.
Sure.
Right? It's not a 5-year boom, it's a 40-year sustainable growth that is managed through projects like this. And that's the most important part that people need to realize.
So with that one, it's as we said, it's a long-term thing. We're not going to see this project tomorrow, but it will help to hopefully overturn, because it's not, by the sounds of what we've been talking about, we are expecting population increases. We are expecting growth in the city. I guess that's maybe the main part. Like, why do we always need 50 new houses or 50 new things being built unless we're actually seeing growth, right?
And that's 100% correct. One of the numbers that we were given, or that that we've been able to see as far as the growth goes, is the need for about 5,500 dwellings over the course of one of these projects, right? So if we need 5,500 dwellings, now keep in mind, in a normal run of a 10-year market, Fort St. John, if we said it was with that 150 single family that we need per year, I mean, you do that over a 10-year period alone, and look at the amount of houses that you need. So and whether that's people graduating, going away to university, coming back, because we're seeing that more popular now. We're seeing, the city's second fastest growing demographic is seniors. Mm-hmm. So they're now sticking around, right? Where it used to be, hey, I'm out of here, I'm going to the island, right? Well, why would you go somewhere gray when you can be somewhere sunny, even though it's minus 20? But stay where the family is, right? So as our markets changed, so do the needs that we're going to have as far as our population goes. So, even if we said Fort St. John's going to see 5,000 people in the next 10 years, that's a result of a move-in type. That's not kids coming back from university. That's not seniors staying. That's not, oops, I just found out we're having our 5th kid. We need another bedroom. Sort of an idea, right? That one's always my favorite.
Don't want 5 kids.
No.
Okay, let's, All right, well, thank you very much. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I know I had to do your job today,
Thanks
apparently.
for doing my job.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We're going to wrap it up today for this week's edition of Trev Talks, and we're going to assume that Trevor's going to be back next
I'll be
week
back
as the
next
host.
week and
you think so? Okay.
back in my chair.
Okay, good, because
like
I don't really
sitting
want
there.
this chair. We had to lower the camera too. Like, it was, it's
Now
kind
I'm
of
gonna have to
embarrassing.
change everything for next week.
All right, that does it for this week's edition of Trev Talks here on Moose FM.
You've been listening to Trev Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.